Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. So we have crime becoming a big wedge issue in the 2025 federal election in Canada, in part because the Liberals don't take it seriously. Pierre, the Conservatives, saying something sensible on crime has somehow turned into something that the Liberals think is very controversial, because they may want criminals locked up despite what the courts say. I am 100% fine with Pierre Poilievre and Conservatives using the notwithstanding clause in order to enforce mandatory minimums. There is nothing against the Charter with mandatory minimums, so we should be using the notwithstanding clause in order to enforce them if the courts get in the way. I want to cut over to a clip of Poilievre talking about this in just a second. I want to then jump over to what Mark Carney's response to all this is, and then jump back over to Pierre Poilievre. But before I get into it, guys, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet a subscriber, and leave a comment on the topic of the day. What do you think about the use of the notwithstanding clause? Where is it appropriate? Where do you think it's not appropriate? But now, without further ado, here is Pierre Poilievre answering a journalist's question about the use of the notwithstanding clause in reference to crime.
Merci, on passe à la prochaine question.
The question was, will you use it for other things? And the answer is, we will only use Section 33 to fight crime. We will only use it to end the Liberal crime wave, which they have unleashed with catch and release hug-a-thug laws. We will reverse all of those laws, and we will bring in the biggest crime crackdown in Canadian history to protect the constitutional charter rights of Canadians to life, liberty, and security of the person.
Merci. On passe à la dernière question.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre.
I should just say one last thing, because after the lost Liberal decade of skyrocketing crime and costs of living, we cannot afford a fourth term. We need a change with a new Conservative government, so you can have food that you afford, homes you can afford, streets that you're safe on, and a paycheck that grows faster than your cost of living. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre, Teresa,
Yes.
3 Global News. Is there an example of when a mass murderer has been set free? Does the parole board not usually rule against that?
Well, the problem is that the ruling just happened in 2022. So the clock started ticking on these cases in that year. So what we will see is 25 years forward, these offenders will be eligible for parole. And it should, when you kill 6 people, you should never be eligible for parole. You should never be able to force the families of the victims to have to come and testify at a parole hearing so that they relive the hell that you've exacted on them.
I like how many questions he's getting from the media on this specific topic, as if what he is saying is somehow like, a little beyond the pale. I can't believe he would say something like this. I need to bring up the funniest reaction to it before I cut over to Mark Carney. Rachel Gilmore reacted to this saying, whoa, Poilievre's announcement today, he would invoke the notwithstanding clause to overturn a Supreme Court ruling and make sure multiple murderers die in prison. This would make him the first prime minister to override the charter using the notwithstanding clause. And over time, it's been made very clear that Rachel Gilmore was not saying this because it was just big news or something like that. She was saying this because she openly opposes the use of the notwithstanding clause to keep murderers locked up, as if that is a big tragedy that murderers will not be able to get out in their lifetimes. Even then, I support the use in order to overturn all these stupid bail rulings from judges, letting multiple-time violent offenders just out of jail before their trial, even though they've repeatedly shown that they cannot handle it. Here's the purpose of jail and the criminal justice system. It is to protect the public. If you are dangerous, if you are incapable of staying out of trouble pre-trial, you should not get out pre-trial. But we have this ridiculous system where if the prosecution wants to keep dangerous criminals or repeat offenders in prison before jail before trial, they need to literally bend over backwards to make an argument in front of a judge, in which if it's a very liberal judge, they'll just dismiss it and say that the guy who stabbed somebody can go back out in the streets and we'll just hope that he actually shows up for his trial. It's ridiculous, which means that prosecutors don't even bother at this point because it's such a waste of time. Now I want to jump over to Mark Carney's reaction, which is absolutely insane, that he thinks that this is somehow a good angle of attack on Poilievre, that, oh my goodness, Poilievre's going to use the notwithstanding clause. Guys, this is like dictatorship.
Pierre Poilievre announced today he would use the notwithstanding to push through his tough on crime agenda. Is there any case you'd invoke the clause to override the charter?
I think this is a very dangerous step. We have a charter of rights and fundamental freedoms in this country, and it's the responsibility, in my view, of the Prime Minister, of the Government of Canada to defend that charter, those fundamental rights and responsibilities and liberties that Canadians enjoy.
The guy supported the use of the Emergencies Act to suspend Canadians' charter rights. What is he talking about? This is a very dangerous step. Locking up criminals, apparently actual criminals, is the dangerous step here. Not lockdowns, not mandates, not the Emergency Act use and freezing bank accounts. It's when we're making sure that Paul Bernardo doesn't get to come up in front of bail hearings or parole hearings anymore. That's when it becomes dangerous.
The politicizing certain issues with respect to fundamental rights is a slippery slope that leads to further politicization. And I understand if I was correctly briefed, it won't surprise you, I didn't watch Mr. Poilievre's press conference, but if I was correctly briefed, that it relates to issues of heinous crimes and murders. You know,
so he even knows that we're talking about heinous crimes and murderers not being allowed parole, and he is still saying it's a dangerous precedent that Poilievre is setting. So he's fully aware of what he's speaking on, and he still thinks this is dangerous. I think that the notwithstanding clause should be even used more liberally than what Poilievre is talking about. I think any person who commits a violent offense, unless disputed, if it's on camera, they should not be let out of jail pre-trial, especially if it's a public offense against a stranger, because if someone's attacking a random stranger, do you think that that person's not going to attack somebody else if you let them out before trial? Especially because they know they're probably going to get locked up. They might just do whatever the heck they want at that point.
being tough on crime, and being tough starts with being smart on crime. And it includes being tough on guns and gun violence. And I note that, with regret, that Mr. Poilievre has voted against every single gun control measure during his very long career as a career politician and member of the House of Commons. I think it's over 200 times.
Because it is Farmer Brown's shotgun that is the problem. Not the fact that because the Liberals have not secured the border over 10 years, and in fact they actually keep passing laws to lower offenses for carrying actual illegally obtained guns, that we have gun violence everywhere. If we were locking people up, if we were not appointing Liberal judges all over the place who don't like locking up criminals, we wouldn't have this problem. But the Liberals would rather disarm people who have never committed an offense in their lives, never misused firearms in the past. That they are the ones who are now going to have to be punished because a bunch of Somali gang members are shooting each other up the streets of Toronto. Make it make sense. They know it doesn't make sense. This is just a stupid wedge issue. And I hope that Poilievre at the debates absolutely smacks them for this, that they have been letting gangsters run around, shooting each other without cracking down on them, and in fact making it easier for those people to operate while going after people who are literally 1/3 as likely to commit a violent offense as the average person in Canada. Gun owners, because you lose your gun license if you commit a violent crime, or I think even certain other, like if you shoplift, you would lose your gun, I believe. I think that would be a criminal offense worthy of getting your gun license pulled. They don't commit criminal offenses because it would be really stupid to when you lose so many privileges by doing it. But yeah, now I want to jump back over to Pierre Poilievre, because even though these are the same press conferences, they can have been kind of dueling back and forth, knowing each other's talking points on these issues. And Poilievre responded to the sort of perspective on crime that Mark Carney has.
And Mark Carney has said he will not change any of the catch and release Liberal laws. like so many elites who don't have to feel the effects of their policies, he agrees with them. When he lives in a protected neighborhood, he is surrounded by security. He spent most of his adult life not even living in Canada. He has no idea what it's like to feel endangered in his community. With Mark Carney, you will get 4 more years of the same out-of-touch liberal catch and release laws that have caused the problem in the first place. So the question is, do I respect Supreme Court decisions? The answer is yes. And I also respect the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which guarantees life, liberty, and the security of the person to every single Canadian. That right has been trampled on by the Liberals' catch and release laws that have unleashed crime and chaos in our communities. And I will use Section 33 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to put an end to the Liberal crime and drug wave and to protect law-abiding Canadians against the dangers that are spreading everywhere in our streets.
Yes.
I would be suggesting to Poilievre that in a debate, this is a great. The thing is that it might not like you to most people, but people living in those sort of mixed suburban urban ridings that the Conservatives need to be able to win this election, hitting on crime heavily will move a lot of voters. And I think going after Carney as an out-of-touch liberal elite who doesn't actually have to suffer with the consequences of his own bad policies and actions is a great thing to do. That this man, doesn't matter if he crashes the economy, he will be fine. Whereas Poilievre actually has grown up and still lives in a world where if the economy goes south, it could actually affect his own standard of living. You know, he probably has had a good amount of savings over time, having been an elected official for quite a length of time. But there's a difference between Poilievre maybe having millions of dollars and Carney having tens of millions of dollars, if not like $100 million. That the man should be slapped at for wanting to keep around the Trudeau-era policies that have made people's lives worse, because it doesn't really seem to be a big deal to him because it's never affected him. It's not that things have to affect you personally for you to take it seriously, but it just demonstrates how out of touch a person Carney is. If it doesn't affect him personally, it seems like he doesn't take it seriously. So anyways, that's it for this video, guys. I do hope that the Conservatives really hone in on this. In fact, I could have brought up the stats, but I know you guys don't want me to be looking at small numbers on charts. Crime in Canada since 2015 has literally gone up. Violent crime has gone up 30% across the country. In provinces like BC, it's gone up 50%, in part because of the combination of terrible policies from the federal Liberals and the BC NDP. This is such a big issue. In Ontario, I think crime's up. Violent crime's up like 40%. Shoplifting's up 30%. This is a major, major sore point for the Liberals, and they are literally unwilling to even change a thing. They're wanting to hire more cops, crack down more on guns, but it's literally taking the same policies they already had, microwaving them, and then just doing them more. That is literally it. So that should be it for me today, guys. Saying that for the second time because I end up trailing off. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that great stuff, and I'll see you guys in another video. I'm going to probably go door knocking for Barbara Ball shortly here, just making sure that I have content to put out throughout the day while I'm talking to Liberals and Conservatives at the doors.